just made one poor throw.
Here we go.
Sama. Abu. Get another picnic basket. Picking them up. Putting them down. Touchdown.
All right. Welcome back. Hopefully you had a great Thanksgiving with your family. You watched plenty of Cyclone games, and you are brought into the Cyclone fan perspective, brought to you by Play the Fight Song podcast, where we highlight all of your college football wants and needs every single week, usually releasing on Thursday on Spotify and Apple. We talked about week 13 last week previewing. We'll have a ton of bowl game stuff, conference championship slates, and huge things like that. So make sure to tune in. Again, Apple and Spotify, where you can find our podcast, and full episodes actually go on our YouTube page as well. So subscribe to the page. If you are new to this program, welcome in. Maybe we have some new faces because exciting times are with the Iowa State football program right now. Justin's got a huge smile on his face. I do too. Behind me, if you can block that out, is the poor showing from the basketball team this weekend. Definitely an underwhelming performance from that group, but we're not here to talk Iowa State basketball. We're here to talk Iowa State football. And boy, I think we have a lot to get to, Justin. How are you doing? I know obviously we saw each other this weekend. I think you're doing well, but we didn't have a chance to watch the game together last night, so I haven't talked to you since. So how are we doing?
No, we weren't able to talk obviously in person during the game, but there's quite a few text messages going back and forth, and I don't know, I couldn't really describe it better than that was just a great way to end the Thanksgiving weekend.
It really was. And there were a lot of things in that game that I did not have on my bingo card. That's for sure. Listening back to some things about, I always listen to like Cyclone Fanatic and the recap radio show after the games and things like that. And everybody was just talking about how much fun they had. And I don't want to get me wrong. I had a lot of fun. Winning is fun, but the pessimist in me, there were a lot of points. There were a lot of parts in that game where I was like, okay, where does the fun end? I mean, we hit one big play. We hit two big plays. I'm like, okay, we're not getting three. There's no way we're getting three. And then there's four. And then there's five. It just kept coming. And I just thought, when was it going to end? I said in our preview, I said Iowa State could get off to like a 14-7 start, maybe a couple of big plays, and they did. Talk about that for a minute. I thought when they hit the two big runs and then K-State just kept having the ball in their hands, obviously, and they just held on to it forever, and we couldn't get them off the field. I thought we couldn't keep this up all game. I don't know how you felt.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised when they continued into the second half. Like, obviously, the first play of the game, Sama going for, was it 77 yards to start? That was pretty awesome. Then they did it again. Was it 2 drives later?
Yeah.
I don't know. But once the game started to get away from us a little bit, I really thought the game was going to slow down in the second half. The fact that it continued to be like that, and the tackling just wasn't really there either on both sides of the ball in the third quarter, that really surprised me.
Iowa State went one play, 71 yards, and then people forget Sama did have that fumble on the second possession. They went 3 plays, 5 yards, and punted on the third possession, and then he had that big run towards the end of the beginning of the second quarter that kind of sparked some more offense. Before we get into that, we're talking about the game a ton. I want to talk about what the headlines going into the night. Obviously, I sent you the Des Moines Register. Travis Hines put out that Cartavius Norton and Eli Sanders just did not make the trip. Now, I think a lot of people are assuming that they're transferring out. I kind of lean that way as well, obviously, and I'm sure if they watched the game last night, they kind of think, yeah, their job might be gone. But I thought this was really interesting. They're still on the team. Cartavius was putting out some tweets supporting the team, which is still cool to see. Matt Campbell, who likes to keep a lot of comments to himself, actually came out and said that, it's probably based on transferring was the reason why they did not make the trip. And that's about as honest of a Campbell answer as you're going to get. So that's pretty telling. I personally, for me, I hate to see it. This was a weird game, and this is an outlier game. I think Abu Sama has uber potential. I think he could be another all-time back at this school, but right now you're left with Carson Hansen. Like, that's it. That is your only other option. And I think somewhere down the road, maybe next year, if they don't find anybody in the portal, they still have Harris, who we haven't seen from Stanford this year. Was really surprised to see him not play last night. But I thought Sanders was always a steady back. I thought Norton was just coming into his own. So to see this was kind of staggering. I don't know how you felt.
Yeah, obviously, both guys being sophomores, you never want to get jumped in the depth chart by a freshman. That can be pretty devastating, especially at the running back or like a quarterback position when there's only one guy out there on the field at a time. But it was pretty obvious for not most of the season, but as the season went on, like Abu needed to start getting more and more carries. I was pretty disappointed that neither of those guys were with the team because, like you said, we still need that second string guy. And that doesn't mean they're not going to get work. I mean, we'd been given equal carries to 3 running backs all season. Just because Abu was going to be first of the depth chart. I mean, I wasn't at practice, so doesn't know, but like
Right.
I'd imagine those other guys were still going to get carries. Like the
Right.
fact that they weren't there means Abu got them all. But if those two still would have been there, still been at the game, I'm sure they still would have gotten usage.
Here's the weird part about it too, is we're not coming off maybe that TCU game where Abu had 2 or 3 huge runs. We're coming off the Texas game where we rushed for 9 total yards.
Yeah.
And nobody got more than, I think it was like 6 or 7 carries. I get
Yeah.
it. The transfer portal window's coming up, so that's probably inclined it way more for them to just kind of step out and maybe they're just gone. Uh, and we don't know. There could be some inside the locker room stuff. Maybe they're still figuring out and they could be back. But I just thought that was really strange. And it couldn't have came at a worse time for those two because I don't think there's any looking back now.
Yeah. No,
Abu Sama, yeah.
that is
So
back now.
yeah, no looking back now. I think that there's a lot to look forward to with that running back room. We had 2 freshmen take the carries yesterday. Like I said, AJ Harris didn't even play. And I hope he sticks around. Maybe we see him again next year. Let's finally talk about it. We get an all-time performance. Obviously, Abu Sama's stat line is the one that sticks out to the eye the most. 16 carries, 272 yards, 3 touchdowns from the freshman. We've seen good running backs in the last couple of years. We've been pretty spoiled with good running backs, a la Breece Hall, David Montgomery, 2 well-known names in the NFL at this point. And for him to step up and break some freshman records like that was pretty amazing. Like I said, it is a little bit of an outlier. I think he could have had maybe 125 to 130 yards rushing on a normal night against this defense. But I think Kansas State kind of gave up tackling towards the end of that fourth quarter. I mean, Kobe Savage, what are you doing? He pushes Abu in the back.
Yeah, was he the one who just pushed him?
Yeah, he gives him a little push, and it was like a Mario Kart boost. He just took off to the end zone for the next 30 yards. At that point, you knew that you really saw, like at that play specifically, how hard it was to tackle last night.
Mm-hmm. As much fun as I was having watching Iowa State and like watching us like make all those big plays, like, what a weird game from Kansas State. Like that was so out of character for them on both sides of the ball, really.
Chris Williams came out and said in his post game on Cyclone Fanatic, he's like, I really hope Kansas State enjoyed it too. Like this was a fun game, and I kind of get it.
Like it.
I kind of get like it was kind of an all-time game. But if I'm Kansas State, I am out of my goddamn mind if I just saw what I saw and we lost that football game last night. And we'll get into all the stats in a minute, but you're in agreement, right? Like that's not Kansas State doesn't look away and be like,
no,
we lost to a better team last night.
That's nothing like what they showed all year, obviously. And I thought it was really a really big thing to give props to Iowa State is they tackled really well in the first quarter, and I thought they've tackled really well in the fourth quarter. Like
they did.
Obviously, we struggled really hard in the second and third to get stops, and they started really getting the run going. But Kansas State wasn't tackling well all day, and at least we put together some stretches and a couple drives that really ended up being the difference in a 1-score game.
I think that's a great point that you just made, is that while Iowa State did give up some pretty grueling drives that kind of made me roll my eyes a little bit, hey, at least they were keeping them in front. Like they could actually tackle Giddens and keep Ward down, and Brooks never got open in the air like Noel did. So I could see it on both sides. Like Iowa State made them grind out drives in the snow where Kansas State literally couldn't on every single scoring possession. So I think that is a good point. Let's talk about the stats now. The moment everybody's been waiting for. Time of possession. Kansas State had the ball for 42 minutes to Iowa State's 17. They both had 13 total drives. Okay, for total plays, Kansas State had 102 to Iowa State's 35 plays. Iowa State scored 6 touchdowns on 35 plays. Let's put that in your head. Total yards was about the same, 497 for K-State. Iowa State had 488. But here's the stat, yards per play. Iowa State had damn near 14 yards per play to Kansas State's 5. I mean, we talked about the rushing before, but I think the most staggering stat, at least I saw, was Iowa State had 2 plays in Kansas State territory. 2 plays where they crossed the 50-yard line and still scored 42 points. Out of all of those, that one's probably pretty eye-opening, but which one to you, Justin, was probably the most surprising?
I know college football has had some crazy games, and like they have crazy games all the time, but like like you say that stat, like 45 points running 2 plays in opponent territory, and we didn't have a single special teams or defensive touchdown.
Yep.
It makes no sense. Like that stat right there just blows my mind. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know of any other game that's been like that. Like, just makes no sense.
And I don't want to start a tangent on myself, and we might talk about it on the podcast, but this is why college football is the,
I
pardon
was
my
gonna say the
language, this is
same
why
thing.
it's the fucking best. You had this game, you had Auburn, Alabama, which was phenomenal. You had all of the other rivalry games. You had the game between Michigan and Ohio State. Like, so many different scenarios, so many different. I mean, look at our I don't know if you want to call friends on the other side of the state. Look how ugly that game was between Nebraska and Iowa. You get so many different games in college football, and this one capped it off. This was really the nightcap of all primetime games. Like, this was the last one on for any of the primetime games of the weekend. So that this is just awesome. I there's no other way to put it. Like, how awesome college football is and how sporadic and just random it really is. So
Yeah, and you can tell we're starting to get a little excited here. I was pretty giddy last night watching the game. It's not a game where you can look at it and be very technical. You just had to enjoy it. And couldn't have enjoyed it anymore.
I think so we had all of these great games this weekend. I want to know, does this one crack your top 5 of all time Iowa State games? I
I
don't
would
know.
say so. It doesn't mean as much like in the grand scheme of things as some of the games that I've seen, but just from a pure like enjoying watching the game, I think it
Did
definitely
you
was.
did you enjoy it start to finish? Like, there was like I said, like the second quarter, I'm like, we're going into halftime. There is no, they fumbled that punt, or like the punt that went off Bacon's foot. Like,
Mhm.
stuff like that. I was like, all right, I mean, I've seen this before. The
I
magic
really did
can't
because it was
sustain.
really just like a backyard football game, really. Like it never obviously I thought they were better than us from like in the first half being down at half. That I wasn't very confident, especially after they got that late score and 2 point off the turnover. But
Right.
like it never felt like the game was out of reach or over. And I never even thought like we were going to continue to bust 60-yard plays. Like that wasn't even a part of it. It just felt like it was going to be a competitive game at
I
some point.
thought when it was 35-35, I thought, or even maybe when Iowa State was at like 28, I was like, if they're actually going to win this game, they have to grind out one drive. They're going to be asked to grind out one drive for it all. Maybe it's 28,
Mhm.
28, 35, 35, whatever it may be. And Jesus, they never had to. They literally never had to, other than really, I mean, the longest drive you could say was, I believe it was the last one, capped by, was it the Higgins touchdown? I mean, I'm going to go here and pull it up in a second, but
Yeah.
the last the last touchdown they had, 3 plays, 76 yards. They had a big pass to Carson Hansen. They had one to Noel, or that was the Noel screen play that
I
ended up.
think I think that second Knoll touchdown, the one up the sideline, really kind of took the life out of him. And
I
I know,
laughed. I'm
oh my
sorry.
god,
I
it made
laughed.
no sense. They highlighted it on the game. They like highlighted all the Kansas State players on that side of the field, and it's like, how did we just score there? Like no one knows. It just didn't make any sense.
Shout out to my favorite player on the team. Didn't really make an impact in this game, but Ben Bramer makes the block of the century on that little screen and really set up a touchdown, more than anything. Kudos to Noel, obviously, for making the play. He's stepped up for us, huge all season long for the most part. But there's a lot of guys that I kind of want to highlight that really stepped up that will probably go unnoticed just because it's maybe the Jalen Knoll game, the Abu Sama game. First one, like I want to start with Drew Surgis, the true freshman steps up for Malik Verdone. I thought Ben Nickel was going to play for him. No, they just roll out another guy that we haven't seen all year, in typical fashion. John Haycock just has guys. I mean, I think they're all robots. I think that every single guy that they have in the 2 or 3 deep, we'll see around in 2 or 3 years. They'll be really good. We'll think they'll be 4-year guys. They may move on to the NFL, or they'll probably transfer out because Haycock's got another freshman in waiting to take their spot. It's like a constant cycle with the secondary at this point. So we're not going to talk about it, but knock on wood, when I saw the Jeremiah Cooper stuff about him signing with an NIL agent last week, yeah, I'm a little concerned. He's probably a first-team all Big 12 caliber safety, but I think I could trust John Haycock to pull another robot out of the closet to replace him for next year. So
yeah, I don't want to get too crazy. I mean, guys like that aren't too easy to replace, but
I will say, okay, I'll cut Drew some slack. I think the snow helped him a little bit, obviously staying in front of the receivers and not getting exposed, being a freshman in that spot. But he still had 10 tackles. He was second on the team in tackles. So I think he played that spot really well. The man of the defense, I'm going Bo Freiler. He had 15 total tackles. That guy, he's been around for a really long time, and he's going to be one of those Cyclones that you're going to be like, damn, we should have appreciated when we had him. He's been a stud ever since he took Aisheem Young's spot as a freshman. He's just been awesome. In games like yesterday or games on Saturday, is just like his sickoness or his level of play just comes out, and he's all over the football. He makes plays, and he's an anchor on that defense for sure. And he's stayed healthy a lot more than some of those other safeties has. So he's got that going for him. Tyler Onyedem goes out with, I thought it was like a leg injury. I'm not really sure, but I thought Trent Jones and Ike Ezeagu stepped up in that spot. They played decently well. I still think this team needs some more help in the portal or freshman class with defensive linemen next year. But the captain, Gary Vaughn, gets the one interception for the defense. If you talk to Matt Campbell and you listen to like his coach's show, I think his favorite player of all time actually might be Gary Vaughn. He loves that guy. And I love him too. He's been a dude that's been around for 5 years. He was on that Fiesta Bowl team. People forget. He's just been battling injuries, and he's been behind guys like Marcel Spears or that might even be earlier than him. But like Orion Vance is a good one. Mike Rose is another one. Like he's been a really good guy for this culture of this locker room. To see him finally get some of the recognition, and I think he even got the game ball last night, was really, really awesome. So I wanted to highlight those guys because those defensive guys especially aren't going to get talked about enough when we look back on this game in 5 years. And I think that's where I stand with this game. I don't even know if I commented on that as a top 5 game for me. I have to sit back and maybe look at the end of the year. Do you tell me this? I like to call it, is it a trampoline game? And what I mean by that is this trampoline setting you up for the next 4 years as a program? If we remember, Campbell kind of had, I would say the trampoline game for him was the first one being the Oklahoma game, I think, in 2017 when they went down there with Kemp.
Yeah.
Kind of set the tone.
Yeah. That paired with the TCU game.
100%. We know that this team has been good, and they've surprised us this year. But me and you have been talking about, they haven't beaten a team that they're better than. They finally got it done last night. They played 6 true freshmen while they did it. Does this catapult Matt Campbell into the new Big 12 for the next 4 years with this group?
I mean, really, the sky is the limit for him. Like, you can make the argument that is the case. Like, without having Texas and Oklahoma in the conference next year, like, who knows who's going to step up? I'm not for sure. Do we have to play Utah next year?
Yep, that's our toughest game. Looking at the schedule, I think Utah's our toughest.
I think they could come into the conference, especially with Cam Rising and have an effect right away. But that's why, like, I was so critical on last week talking about the interceptions, because it's that little stuff, like how small the margins are going to be for us with the other Big 12 teams, like this K-State team, like the Okie State. Yeah, we beat the team who's going to the Big 12 championship this year, and we just went on the road and beat another top 4 team in the conference. I mean,
Yep.
if we're doing that with the amount of freshmen and young and lack of experience that we do now, like who knows how good they could be next year.
I think for Iowa State fans, and you've told me before, I feel like I'm reasonable with expectation. I think Iowa State fans for next year should expect 8 wins. I think Utah will easily be the favorite in the Big 12 going next year. Absolutely. I think Kansas will be really good. Texas Tech, Arizona with Noah Fafita will be really good. But I think you can, in 2 years from now, knock on wood, everybody stays healthy. They keep everybody together. I mean, hey, man, the 12-team playoffs around. And I think 2 years, Iowa State could be a college football playoff contender.
Look at you now. See, I'm always the one who gets all excited about talking about the future, and you always grill me. And then you start talking about the playoff because we
Okay, but it's
snow.
different now. It's different now. Listen to the podcast, please, and I will go on a rant about how the 14 playoff needs to stay the 14 playoff. I hate the 12 team, but with automatic bids, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have put playoff and Iowa State in the same conversation. In 2 years, I think Iowa State could be one of the front runners to win the Big 12. And if they do that, they will be an automatic qualifier for the playoff. That's what I meant. I don't want to put Iowa State as like we might be a top 10 team and might even get an at-large bid for the college football playoff in 2 years. That's not what I'm saying. But with an automatic qualifier in the new era of college football, I think this team can easily compete as a top 3 spot 2 years down the road. I would say next year, maybe a top 5 or 6 spot for the new Big 12. But hey, let's stop getting ahead of ourselves, Justin. Jeez, relax with the playoff talk. We still have a bowl game to play.
Like I said a second ago, I mean, the sky really is the limit for this group. But at the same time, the margins are really small. And if next year maybe we deal with a couple injuries and a couple breaks don't go our way, like who knows what's going to happen. And that's one of the reasons why like this game even made me more happy, because I was just really happy for the team. And like to see them come together at the end of the year and put together a performance like this with how young they were and all the stuff they were battling with, it was really fun to watch. It was a really good culmination of a long season.
That's a great word. I was going to say it culminated the most bipolar Iowa State football season I think I've ever been a part of. And I don't think it could have ended any more poetic. Let's talk about
we got another game left.
Hey, we do have another game. I do want to highlight this. Normally I would probably just scratch it and we'd go towards the end, but I want to highlight our 3 keys we went over in the game and how I don't think any of them were covered and they still won the football game. That's how weird it was. Year 2, you had turnovers and getting pressure on Howard. I would argue, first of all, there was not a lot of pressure on Howard last night. He had a lot of time, specifically on that last play of the game. He had all day, and he still couldn't make the throw. Turnover-wise, we lost the turnover battle 2-1 on a just that muffed punt or whatever you want to call it was gut-wrenching. I thought that could have turned the tide. But tell him, Justin, what didn't we do?
We did not throw an interception, which brings us to 7-0 on the season when we don't throw a pick. So I'm not asking Rocco to be perfect, but if he is, we're probably going to be perfect as well, is what the stats are showing.
When you're 8-12 for 230 and 3 touchdowns, I mean, that's about as perfect as you can play. I legitimately, your quarterback rating was 310. That's not even realistic. He was
8-12 with 230 and 3 touchdowns, and his air yards might have been like 10 yards a pass. It was a true Brock Purdy performance, if you ask me. People like to give Brock Purdy shit for his Niners performances, and like I don't know, Rocco's just a spitting image of that last night.
Get it out. And lastly, my last key was special teams. Like I talked about, like that plays like that muff punt last night, where it goes off Bacon's legs, stuff like that costs Iowa State football games, especially in the Farmageddon rivalry. That one always costs them, and it just didn't seem to happen. None of these teams really needed to rely on their field goal kickers. They more so just went for it if they had to, and Iowa State, like we talked about before, they didn't get in Kansas State territory, so it never needed to be a problem. They punted really well. I was for sure there was going to be some sort of mishap on the punt.
That punt that died on the 2-yard line was awesome.
Tyler Perkins, man, he has been rock solid all year, and he played awesome yesterday. He had a bunch of great punts, and in a game where we usually see an Iowa State punter mess up in a situation like that.
Something I did want to touch on. I know I said like getting pressure was a big key, but one of like the biggest things I said getting pressure for is because I didn't want Will Howard to be comfortable and pick apart our secondary. I thought our secondary played phenomenal yesterday. Our whole defense as a whole, I'm glad you like touched on those players earlier and like singled some of the guys out. But the fact that they were on the field as long as they did and they kept tackling and kept guarding in that fourth quarter, it felt like in the fourth quarter that Howard, like, not that nobody was open, but it felt like their best play was him just throwing it deep and trying to get a PI. Like there was
Right.
nothing there. There was nothing they could have did. And you could see the frustration on his face at the end of the game when he slammed his helmet. Like the defense
that made my year.
For being on the field as long as they were in the snow, in those conditions, they never broke the entire game. Like that was I know they gave up 35 points, but what a performance by the defense. And I know it's going to get overshadowed because of the big plays by the offense, but you couldn't have put those guys in a tougher spot. I know the snow slows down the offense as well, but the defense
here's
absolutely
where
rose to the occasion.
No. Here's where I'm going to give them the credit. We saw how hard it was to stay in front of Iowa State's offensive players. For them to hold those receivers like Brooks and Keegan Johnson, and I know Sinnott got away on one, but like they kept them all in front. And that was where I like talked about Sturgis. And I thought that, yeah, the snow probably helped him a little bit. But like when we couldn't get pressure, they still stayed in front of those receivers and they didn't really let them get open. I don't remember who made a play. Somebody made a play on Brooks for a touchdown. I think it was Cooper. It was just an awesome play. He falls to the ground. There's snow in his helmet. He just, it was the secondary. That's a good highlight. They really played awesome. We're getting a little too long here, as I kind of predicted. So let's wrap it up just a little bit here, Justin. You wanted to talk about bowl games.
Yeah,
I think now, I don't know. From every Iowa State thing I listen to, everybody thinks they're getting sent to the Alamo Bowl. A lot of it depends on.
I heard Oklahoma's going to the Alamo Bowl.
See, that's where I think so too, because everything I read, like CBS, Athlon, right now I'm on 3. They have Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl. This one has Iowa State playing Minnesota in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. 2 things are interesting. Number one, that fucking bowl sucks.
Yeah.
Because right after Christmas, it's 8:00 at a baseball field in Phoenix. Number 2, Minnesota doesn't even have 6 wins. They have 5. So their academics must just be superior. So that would suck to play a team that doesn't even have 6 wins. I really hope Iowa State doesn't get in that one. I would imagine they would probably at least put them in Memphis because of how well the teams travel, but
who would we potentially play in Memphis?
SMU, which Stone, their quarterback, just went down with a leg injury. We'll watch them this weekend to see how they play in the American Championship. So I don't know. Have you seen anything else, anything different, I should say?
No, I haven't looked into like actual predictions on where we're going to play or who we're going to play, just like some thoughts on it. I think it would be good for this team. I know it depends on the matchup and where we're playing, but I think it'd be good for this team after seeing us finally beating somebody that we were supposed to get another chance to maybe be a favorite and like have to defend. There's nothing to defend, but like show up after a performance like that. Obviously, that was a super emotional game, and the bowl games don't matter as much, but especially with a young team, I don't want them to get cocky and kind of not show up. That would really be disappointing going into the offseason. I want to see us like just have to play a clean game again.
No, I will say I think a team would show up if we played Minnesota, because I know that I'm pretty sure Campbell and Fleck have some old Maction beef. And Fleck kind of thinks he's all that. So I think they would be up for that one. Last one before we go. Jerry Palm of CBS Sports says Iowa State playing Louisiana in the Armed Forces Bowl on December 23rd. That game's usually cold.
Awesome. I would like that. I would love that, actually.
It's at TCU Stadium. It's kind of cold. December 23rd is the night before Christmas. I don't know if I love that spot, but I think this team deserves a little revenge on Louisiana. That I could be a part of.
I know the venue and the date wouldn't be great, but I think like playing a really good group of 5 team like that would be a really good test for this young team to end the season. I would like to see how we would respond to something like that.
That's a 3:30 kick on Saturday, December 23rd. So I guess maybe Iowa State fans would travel if it's on the weekend down in Texas and the weather isn't too bad. Before we get out of here, Justin, awesome recap. definitely an amazing Iowa State win to cap off an awesome season so far. A lot of football still be left to play, but I want to know, do you have a prediction or score for this week's Big 12 championship game between Texas and Oklahoma State?
I
Putting you on the
imagine
spot here.
what's the spread in that game?
I thought I saw Texas was like a 13-point favorite.
That sounds about right. I did not think they were going to get away from Tech that fast. That was pretty impressive. And honestly, like, I know a lot of Big 12 fans have it out for Texas because they're leaving the conference, but I think it's at least something. I wouldn't mind seeing them get into the playoff, get another Big 12 team back in the playoff just to show like that this conference is legit. So I hope that works out for them. But I don't know, seeing Gundy stick it to those guys right before they leave would be pretty cool too.
I think
I'd imagine it's Okie State hasn't been playing that good, but they've been rallying. I would say it's probably going to be something like 27 to like probably like 27-14 Texas.
Yeah, that's a good guess. I think Oklahoma State's really, I mean, their strength is running the football, and I don't think Texas is going to give them a yard. I think it could get out of hand.
No, let me. Yeah, I think it's going to be 31-10.
I didn't mean to stray you away from it.
No,
I'm just
you're
saying,
right. You're right though. But Ollie Gordon is really good. So I mean, if Texas can stay away from turning the ball over, no one's going to catch them. I mean, they beat Bama pretty handily at their place this year. They're a good team.
Oklahoma State, I don't know how you're in this situation. You zombie walked your last 3 weeks into this championship game, but whatever.
Yeah.
You got to stick up for us guys
for them,
left in the Big 12. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Should be a good one. That's why you got to listen to this week's episode. Me, Parks, JP, and Reese will touch on that more, and we'll give you guys a more accurate prediction of what's going to happen on Saturday. We went a little long, 31 minutes. I think I could sit here and talk about this for another hour and a half, but we do have to go. Appreciate you all tuning in. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Me and Justin will be back eventually. I don't know, probably more after we know who we're going to play for the bowl game. And we're going to break that down. We'll give you one more recap before the season's over. Since we've really jumped on this, it has been a lot of fun. We couldn't have done it at a better time. Iowa State's playing really good football heading into the month of December. Didn't think I would be saying that 2 months ago, but here we are. Follow us on TikTok at Play the Fight Pod. Follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook at Play the Fights or Play the Fight Pod. Play the Fight Song on TikTok. Bad shout out there, but follow us. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And again, listen to us every Thursday on Spotify and Apple. Thanks for listening to us. We appreciate you guys. And as always, you do know what it is. Go Cyclones.